In the dusty, sun-drenched streets of ancient Judea, a quiet rebellion was brewing, one step at a time. It all began when Rome, in its insatiable hunger for control and coin, decided that the humble sandal, a staple of Judean life, was a worthy target for taxation. Leather straps worn and scuffed by miles of sacred and daily journeying suddenly bore the empire's mark in the form of a tax. Yet in this unassuming move lay the tinder for unrest. The sandal, a symbol of status, purity and faith, became a rallying point, its silent protest echoing through cobbled courtyards and bustling marketplaces. Here, within every threadbare soul, lay the whispered defiance of a people pushed too far. Step with me into the ancient dust of Judea, a turbulent land under the shadow of Roman rule, where the simple act of walking became a silent rebellion. In the early 1st century, Rome, ever hungry for revenue, introduced a tax not on lands or harvests, but on sandals, a leather duty that turned each step into a coin for the empire. Designed to fill the coffers of Roman governors, this tax, however, was more than a mere fiscal maneuver. It was a constant, biting reminder of imperial overreach. Judea, rich in tradition and spirituality, viewed sandals as symbols of freedom, identity, and sacred expression. Here, each footprint was a trace of ancient journeys and a link to something divine. Romans, oblivious to these layers of meaning, inadvertently tread on deeply rooted cultural sensibilities. The sandal tax was like a pebble thrown into a pond, its ripples disturbing the stillness of a land spiritually entwined with its footsteps. As the people walked, each step now felt weighted down by this unwelcome intrusion, turning day-to-day errands into palpable resistance against their distant rulers. In the heart of Roman strategy lay the insatiable need for continuous revenue to support its sprawling empire. Judea, being a small province, offered limited traditional tax opportunities, prompting Roman minds to seek profit even from the soles of feet. What they saw as just another financial measure, the locals perceived as a profound grievance. This tax exemplified the gulf dividing Roman practicality from Judean sensibility, a dangerous oversight with rumbling consequences. Across Judea, where prophets once roamed, sandals carried spiritual weight far beyond their function. These leather straps were bridges to a shared past, tools of sacred passage. Taxing them was akin to taxing the very spirit of the land. Merchants and farmers alike felt the pinch of this new levy, transforming vibrant markets into hotbeds of hushed defiance. Ordinary purchases turned into acts of quiet rebellion, each pair of sandals a narrative of financial strain melded with cultural dignity. The sandal tax had ironic consequences, exposing the stark inequities of Judean society. For the wealthy, it was a mere nuisance, a topic for complaints over dinner. For the poor, it was a biting reminder of their subjugation, a burden against their already fragile livelihoods. It highlighted the fracture lines of inequality, with every taxed step echoing disdain for distant power and its oppressive demands. In a land where superstition and spiritual tradition wove tightly together, the Romans blundered into a cultural minefield. Whispered tales of cursed sandals and divine displeasure spread through the streets, deepening the sense of imperial oppression. These stories painted Roman tax collectors as hapless participants in a cosmic play where divine wills opposed earthly edicts. Thus, the simple act of collecting taxes inflamed suspicions, tying financial resentment to spiritual unrest. The Roman tax was more than ledger lines and bureaucratic edicts. Enforcing it required an invasive presence in everyday Judean life. Tax collectors, draped in Roman insignia, were stark reminders of foreign domination. Their presence turned simple footwear into instruments of control, where each sandal sold or purchased was a small skirmish in the larger battle between autonomy and submission. These confrontations fueled the rising tide of defiant whispers, strengthening the resolve of those who felt like strangers in their own land. In this climate of oppression, Judeans forged unity in resistance. Where individual acts of defiance once stood, now lay a broader tapestry of quiet rebellion. Worn leather straps became canvases for messages of liberty, their worn paths symbols of shared struggle. The Sandal Tax, intended as a simple policy, ignited a culture of resistance that unified diverse communities. Even in silence, their steps resonated with the memories of ancestors resistant to Roman chains, fueling a collective resolve that Roman might struggle to quell. This movement of defiance found its march from crowded town squares to sacred spaces, binding religion and rebellion with historic gravity. In the temple, where religious discourse once prevailed, protest woven into ritual echoed through the columns. Here, with sandals against sacred cobblestone, Judeans mingled acts of defiance with gestures of piety, etching roots of resistance into Jerusalem's very fabric. Though the sandal tax eventually fell silent, its reverberation etched a deeper imprint on Judean identity. Rome, known for its roads and power, encountered an unanticipated backlash from the lowest levels of society, from the soles of common sandals. The revolt reshaped Judean defiance, echoing through generations. The humble sandal endured as a symbol of resilience, a testament to the strength of cultural and spiritual identity in defiance of oppression. Each step on this ancient land became a story of resistance to be passed through time, forever reminding us of the enduring power of simple acts against mighty empires. In the rugged landscape of ancient Judea, the sandal was more than just a piece of footwear. Crafted from local leather and bound with thongs, these simple shoes shielded walkers from sharp stones and the relentless sun. The craftsmanship, passed down through families, imbued sandals with a deeper significance, transforming them into emblems of personal and communal identity. The artisans who created them were not just tradespeople. They were custodians of tradition, infusing each pair with cultural motifs that spoke volumes of the Judean spirit, a people continually moving through hills and valleys imprinted by their terrain. As the Roman Empire extended its reach over Judea, the status of the sandal shifted from everyday necessity to a potent symbol of cultural and political identity. The Romans, in their quest for control, saw opportunities for taxation. Sandals, a fixture of daily life, became entangled in the fiscal web, not just as commodities, but as extensions of cultural sovereignty. Taxation of sandals was seen not merely as an economic hardship, but as an infringement on a deeply intertwined cultural and spiritual life, stirring the simmering tensions beneath Roman rule. Beyond their practical use, sandals were markers within Judean society, speaking silently of one's status and spiritual standing. For peasants, sandals were practical, crafted from tough leather, mirroring the toil of life under the sun. In contrast, the affluent and the religious elite wore sandals of finer make, discreetly adorned to reflect societal roles and spiritual-like footprints in Jerusalem. Religious nuances further complicated this stratification. For instance, while a wealthy merchant might flaunt cordovan leather, a rabbi would choose modest designs to reflect humility and piety. Thus, when Rome levied a tax, It struck at the heart of Judean identity, challenging a cultural icon that resonated deeply within their social fabric. In this society, going barefoot was a poignant symbol of mourning and devotion. Prophets and sages often walked without sandals, not merely as an act of exposure, but as a declaration of spiritual integrity and societal critique. Sandals, or their absence, carried messages of introspection and faith, binding people to divine will without uttering a word. The Roman sandal tax did more than impose a financial burden. It punctured these expressions, sparking unrest as it attempted to commodify a deeply embedded ritual practice. Sandals were also woven into the sacred narratives, appearing in tales passed down through scripture that shaped the Judean way of life. Stories of Joseph being sold, the prodigal son's return, and Moses at the burning bush all featured sandals symbolically, representing redemption, reverence, and divine encounters. By taxing these symbols, Romans inadvertently trampled on the hallowed cultural ground. For Judeans, the tax became emblematic of Roman insensitivity, highlighting an ignorance of their sacred traditions, a misstep that resonated across occupied territories. The role of the artisan in the narrative was not just as a maker, but as a vital thread in the cultural tapestry. Sandal makers such as those in Sepphoris were pillars of community life, their hands weaving societal tales into leather and fabric. Roman taxation threatened this delicate balance, eroding the autonomy that crafted not just shoes, but the very spirit of Judean identity. This conflict transcended mere economics, metamorphosing into a political and spiritual outcry as artisans grappled with the challenge to their community role, precipitating both collaboration and silent subversion of imperial edicts. The tax infiltrated Judean life, provoking financial struggle and social tension. Sandals, essential for braving the arid terrain, became reluctantly politicized, dividing communities along economic lines as the financially secure maneuvered through leverage, while others faced relentless hardship. The levy magnified social divides, the sandal, a once unifying emblem, now a subtle stratification, fomenting grievances that birthed a resistance rooted in ancient identity. But Judeans, ever resilient, began crafting their defiance through cultural symbolism. Citizens inscribed sandals with cryptic messages and symbols, discreet prayers and scriptural phrases, so that each pair of sandals became a vehicle of protest, a whispered rebellion. These acts wound through the fabric of everyday life, transforming sneakers into silent witnesses to a resilient heritage. Artisans clandestinely crafted rebellion into every strap and stitch, blending rebellion with spirituality and tradition to loudly denounce Roman authority without uttering a sound. Roman oversight failed them in Judea. In reducing sandals to a simple tax line, they stoked the fires of resistance. The tax, intended as pragmatic, only bonded the Judean spirit in subtle defiance, unseen by the very empire it opposed. Yet beneath this oversight lay an awakening. Judeans merged faith with resistance, igniting a movement grounded not in violence, but in the quiet strength of cultural resolve. As synagogues echoed with murmured dissent, a spiritual rebellion took hold, blending community with resistance against Roman domination. Thus, the sandal tax unwittingly stitched a narrative of change, transcending fiscal policy to usher in broader societal transformation. Through a seemingly mundane imposition, profound shifts illuminated the path of collective resistance and introspection. These steps forward wove the past with a present yearning for autonomy, fortifying Judean identity within the weave of defiant cultural expression, a testament now walked proudly through time. In the heart of Jerusalem, the temple stood as a beacon of spiritual significance, far more than a mere architectural marvel. It was the lifeblood of Jewish religious life, drawing pilgrims from every corner of Judea and beyond. For many, visiting the temple was the spiritual journey of a lifetime, a chance to perform sacred rituals, offer sacrifices, and touch the divine. Yet this sacred atmosphere was tainted when the Roman sandal tax intruded upon its hallowed grounds. Roman officials viewed the temple not as a sanctuary, but as a potential revenue stream, extending their sandal tax to this revered space. This wasn't just another fiscal measure, it was a direct encroachment on a sacred tradition, transforming the act of entering a holy place into a transaction clouded with bureaucratic demands. Sandals worn by pilgrims as they approached the temple held deep symbolism. They were practical for the journey, yet underscored humility and devotion, linking the sacred with the mundane. Pilgrims don these simple shoes as a gesture of modesty before God, sometimes removing them in reverence, acknowledging holy ground just as the prophets once did. The Roman imposition of a tax on these sandals disrupted these serene moments of spirituality, overshadowed by hawkish tax collectors at temple gates. What once symbolised simplicity and spiritual focus shifted violently into the realm of currency in an unwelcome economic machine, making sacred gestures taxable transactions and causing a deep sense of violation among those seeking solace. Trade at the temple too was a dance between economics and spirituality. Vendors provided the necessary sacrificial animals and religious items, integral to both pilgrim rituals and priestly duties. This wasn't mere commerce, but a vital service to spiritual practice, a delicate balance between material and divine. With the sandal tax, this equilibrium was threatened. Traders found themselves caught between spiritual vocation and new tax obligations, struggling to maintain focus on pilgrims' spiritual needs amidst this intrusion. Every step taken within these sacred precincts now came with a monetary shadow, infusing transactions with a moral dilemma. For pilgrims, the journey to the temple was a labour of love and spirit, an arduous undertaking for many. It was a time of fellowship and spiritual revival, participating in ancient rituals, reconnecting with their heritage in a celebration of faith and identity. Yet the sandal tax at the temple's entrance tainted what was meant to be transformative with icy Roman transactionalism. This dissonance sparked outrage, the tax perceived as an insult to their devout dedication, highlighting the harsh power dynamics between them and their Roman occupiers. Priests, custodians of sacred rites and revered figures in society, found their symbolic footwear, modest sandals worn to signify humility and purity, taxed and demeaned. Roman officials reduced these emblems of devotion to fiscal opportunities, stripping priests of symbolic connections and sullying their spiritual autonomy. This assault on the temple's spiritual fabric bred resentment as priests and people alike felt their religious integrity assailed. The temple gates, once thresholds between secular life and divine communion, became contested spaces. Crossing these gates formally meant shedding worldly concerns for a singular focus on worship. But now stood Roman tax collectors, representing secular power within spiritual grounds. This presence became a daily reminder of the cultural and political clash between Jewish tradition and Roman rule. Clashes at these entry points reflected the deeper tensions where religious conviction confronted imperial dominance. The emotional impact of the sandal tax was profound, like a cold hand on the warmth of worship. Pilgrims approaching the temple anticipated encounters with the divine, seeking intimate and untainted connections. But the intervention of Roman taxation, marking each visit with an added burden, felt like a personal affront. Frustration bubbled into broader feelings of defilement and betrayal. Worshippers entering the temple, once driven by reverence and anticipation, now carried with them growing resentment and anger, not only towards Roman authorities, but towards the conditions that seemed manipulating their sacred rites. Public outcry began to crystallize into organized dissent, voices from all walks of life uniting in opposition to this infringement on religious sovereignty. Influential community figures stepped forward, voicing the collective displeasure against sacrilege and pushing for resistance. What began as murmurs of dissatisfaction grew into orchestrated protest, as leaders emerged to guide the people towards reclaiming their sacred integrity in the face of foreign imposition. Sandals evolved into symbols of rebellion, transcending their original function. Their taxation became a metaphor for the imposed burdens of Roman rule, a stand-in for the fight against cultural dominance. To wear or discard sandals at the temple gates now carried clandestine meanings, laden with defiance. Judeans, in their subtlety, embraced this as a form of rebellion, turning ordinary footwear into emblems of cultural resistance. Choices surrounding sandals rippled with political resonance, signalling the storms of defiance brewing across Judea. The enforcement of the sandal tax laid the groundwork for rebellion, escalating simmering tensions into outright defiance. What was simple annoyance matured into anger, leading to acts of disobedience. Conversations shifted from whispers to demands for action. As social and political connections strengthened, people rallied together, seeking to reclaim spiritual autonomy. The sandal tax gave voice to Judean grievances, becoming a rallying cry against Roman domination, igniting resistance that would bleed into broader struggles for identity and sovereignty. In the bustling heart of Sepphoris, a humble sandal maker named Ezra became an unexpected force of defiance. Known far and wide as Ezra the Shoemaker, he was more than just an artisan. He was a cornerstone of the community, cherished for his honesty and the quality of his craftsmanship. His small, cluttered workshop was filled with the comforting sound of hammers against leather and the warm chatter of loyal patrons. But in these troubled times, with Roman demands weighing heavily on his people, Ezra faced a choice: comply with an unjust empire or stand by his neighbours. For Ezra, who saw sandal making as a sacred calling, the choice was clear. He refused to pay the sandal tax. Ezra's decision was not born of a desire for rebellion, but from a deep belief in the cultural and spiritual significance of his craft. In Judea, sandals were more than mere footwear. They were a link to ancestors, a symbol of the Jewish way of life. By refusing to relent, Ezra wasn't just defending his livelihood, he was protecting a piece of his people's identity. This act of defiance resonated deeply with those around him, striking a chord in Sepphoris and setting events in motion that he hadn't foreseen. The Roman response was as swift as it was brutal. Soldiers arrived at Ezra's workshop, their presence a chilling reminder of imperial domination. Clad in ominous armour, they dragged Ezra into the street and beat him publicly, hoping to silence any dissent. Every strike was a warning to the townsfolk. Resistance would not be tolerated. But rather than quelling the spirit of resistance, their actions fanned its flames. Witnessing the harsh punishment of a respected figure, the community of Sepphoris felt their outrage transform into resolve. The sandal tax was laid bare as not just an economic burden, but an assault on their way of life. The violence against Ezra left the town steeped in a sombre unity. Markets that once bustled with life fell quiet as the people absorbed the shock of the oppression before them. In Ezra's absence, Sepphoris lost more than a skilled artisan. It lost a silent leader, a beacon of fairness and justice. As townsfolk gathered, sharing their indignation, a sense of shared struggle solidified. Ezra's solitary defiance became the seed of a collective movement against exploitation. Then, under the cover of night, Ezra's workshop was consumed by flames. The smouldering ruin stood as a stark symbol against the morning sky, not of destruction, but of a dangerous shift toward active resistance. Many initially viewed it as Roman retaliation, a final blow to discourage further defiance. However, whispers suggested it was the work of rebels, kindling a signal beyond the boundaries of Sepphoris. The destruction served as a dual symbol, a tribute to Ezra's integrity and a rallying cry for insurrection. This fiery act did not intimidate the community. On the contrary, it birthed new channels for rebellion. Far from cowering, the people of Sepphoris began meeting in secret, weaving an underground network that strengthened their unity. Coded phrases and subtle symbols of resistance flowed through the town. Inspired by Ezra's courage, the people of Judea found solidarity in defiance, with new alliances forming between merchants, farmers, and rebels. Slowly, the spirit of protest crept beyond Sepphoris, casting a wide net over the region. Ezra's defiance became a catalyst that united diverse segments of Judean society. The Sandal Revolt sparked connections across distances and differences, sewing a tapestry of shared grievances and steadfast resolve. Voices once isolated now found strength in numbers, transforming past whispers into a resounding call for autonomy. Romans, who initially dismissed these acts as isolated unrest, were now alert to a spreading undercurrent of rebellion. Stricter surveillance and harsher punishments ensued, but the unified Judean front was not so easily subdued. In this evolving resistance, the sandal itself transformed into a potent symbol of freedom. No longer merely a piece of attire, it now stood for the struggle against tyranny. Each worn sole, each leather strap, spoke of perseverance and identity, illustrating the people's shared journey and common valour. The sandal, humble and unassuming, became a testament to the power of collective action. The fire that consumed Ezra's workshop ignited more than wood and leather. It sparked a movement. The rebellion spread swiftly, harmonising with broader Judean aspirations for autonomy. It merged socio-political desires for freedom and spiritual renewal, becoming a powerful force that transcended local grievances and resonated across the Judean landscape. In Sepphoris and beyond, every step taken by a sandal-clad rebel echoed with a new kind of hope, one forged in defiance, tempered in unity, and bound for a future beyond the reach of Roman grasp. The sandal, a simple piece of footwear, left prints deep enough to be remembered, a powerful symbol of liberty and shared dignity. In the heart of ancient Judea, under the oppressive weight of Roman rule, an unexpected form of protest began to emerge. Citizens, frustrated by the newly imposed sandal tax, turned to a humble yet potent medium for their dissent: the very sandals they wore. These ordinary pieces of leather, now laden with political significance, became canvases of rebellion. Graffiti etched into straps and soles whispered quiet defiance against the empire's grasp. The words and symbols engraved here were not just expressions of grievance, they were acts of unity, a shared resistance that crept through the streets and alleys, too subtle for Roman eyes to immediately catch. In bustling marketplaces and along dusty village roads, the sandals of Judea began to speak. What seemed to Roman officials as mere shoes to be taxed became a lifeline for rebellion. Intricate messages or simple symbols turned these everyday items into walking provocateurs. The more elaborate the design, the more it piqued curiosity, spreading dissent like wildfire through dry brush. Each step taken in these sandals whispered tales of a people unbroken, defiantly repurposing their oppression into empowerment. As the soles of these sandals wore thin, so did the patience for Roman oppression, setting a stage for a greater and more visible resistance. Among the myriad symbols that adorned these sandals, the fish held particular resonance. Simple and profound, this motif drew from deep wells of religious and cultural significance. Across spiritual traditions, the fish had come to symbolize both faith and survival. As the sandal-based movement gained momentum, this symbol provided a rallying point for Judeans of all walks of life. The fish's unassuming form made it a perfect fit for quick etching, marking those who walked with it as part of the quiet uprising. What these symbols lacked in verbosity, they made up for in power and shared meaning, transforming everyday footwear into omnipresent protests against imbalance and injustice. Engraved alongside these symbols, a single word began to emerge on the straps of sandals: Hofshi, meaning free. This word encapsulated not just a desire for liberation from Roman rule, but a deeper yearning to reclaim cultural identity and autonomy. Inscribing Hofshi was more than a protest, it was a declaration of identity. Carrying this word, each pair of sandals became a powerful testament to the Judean spirit, resolute against the steely grip of empire. The simple act of scratching these letters into leather echoed through the cities and villages, an audible chord of freedom, subtle yet sonorous, in the face of towering opposition. As tensions mounted, some individuals opted to abandon the sandal tax by abandoning the sandals themselves. Walking barefoot through the cobbled streets of Judea became a striking form of protest. This act served a dual purpose, openly defying Roman taxation while drawing from a tradition of humility and piety associated with prophets and spiritual leaders. The sight of bare feet on beaten path turned from an act of pilgrimage into a statement of revolt. Each unshod footfall sounded as a drumbeat of defiance, a rhythmic reminder to Rome of a resistance growing beneath their noses. Beyond direct action, more covert means of protest took shape. Broken sandal tacks and scattered shards appeared on well-travelled Roman roads, a tactical disruption by Judean rebels. The empire, which thrived on its ability to move goods and militias swiftly, now faced unforeseen hindrances on its own routes. These small acts of sabotage, seemingly minor, underscored a larger strategy. When mighty Rome stumbled on seemingly insignificant hurdles, they realised their grip had begun to falter, undone by the very paths they had paved. Amidst these acts of resistance, an underground network of skilled engravers emerged, individuals who risked their lives to etch messages of revolt onto sandals. Each artisan wielded a tool, not just of craft, but of courage. Their clandestine workshop became crucibles of dissent, where ordinary leather turned into means of communication and silent rebellion. These engravers marked their sandals with discreet symbols, ensuring messages circulated without attracting Roman scrutiny. Every pair of etched sandals was a silent messenger, carrying the weight of defiance with every step. ensuring the fire of resistance burned bright within the souls of Judea. In the lively marketplaces of Judea, the spirit of protest took on new forms. Here, merchants and traders, deeply woven into the fabric of their communities, began incorporating patterns of resistance into their wares. These designs, subtle yet distinct to the knowing eye, carried messages that transcended the mere exchange of goods. Under the guise of commerce, a silent dialogue unfolded, as traders became unwitting heralds of defiance. In shared whispers, coded patterns, and knowing glances, the marketplace became a theatre of resistance, where even the act of buying and selling was laced with rebellion and resolve. As the tale unfolds, villages take centre stage as cradles of communal craft, where shared skills and wisdom sow seeds of revolt far from Roman scrutiny. Artisans use tools of everyday life to spin and weave symbols of resistance into the very fabric of their existence. Generations of shared heritage found new purpose in this rebellion, imbuing each woven thread, each stitched sock, with silent messages of unity. From isolated hamlets to bustling marketplaces, the pulse of rebellion quickened across the land. Judea's defiance became a vibrant pageant of unity, where bustling gatherings once meant for commerce now thrummed with the rhythm of revolt. In the eyes of outsiders, innocent market days remained just that, but beneath this facade lay an orchestra of resistance, harmonised by the will of the people. Each encounter echoed with possibility, each sandal told a tale of determination. As these stories wove into the fabric of Judean life, small acts of defiance laid the groundwork for greater movements yet to come, ensuring the ethos of rebellion walked step by step with the generations that followed. In the heart of ancient Judea, where commerce intertwined with daily survival, merchants were the silent orchestrators of life. From the winding alleys of Jerusalem to the broad expanses of Jericho's markets, they formed the veins through which the lifeblood of the economy flowed. Sandals worn by all who trekked the dusty roads were more than items of trade. They were necessities that chronicled every step of Judea's storied paths. The sandal tax imposed by Roman overlords was no trivial matter. It was a burden that turned each transaction into a silent battleground against imperial authority, shadowing the once uncomplicated act of buying and selling. Merchants, guardians of this fragile economic balance, soon found themselves at the forefront of a swelling rebellion. No longer was the sandal tax just a thorn in the side, it was a rallying cry. Their decision to resist was not made in isolation, but was a collective uprising that signified a shift in power dynamics. By choosing defiance over compliance, they wielded their control over trade routes as a potent weapon against tyranny. This was not mere disobedience, but an emerging unity across Judea, cementing the truth that together their economic influence could stand against an oppressive regime. A profound hush descended upon the markets as discontent smouldered among traders. Shop closures became a vivid form of protest, with merchants leaving their stalls empty and hallways silent. The lively chatter of trade gave way to the occasional murmur of puzzled customers faced with barren shelves. This absence exposed the merchants' significance. Their withdrawal, a loud testament to their fundamental role in Judea's economy. It forced even the indifferent to confront the crisis, turning the daily bustle of trade into a powerful declaration of unity. Where there was once the rustle of coin and the clank of goods, there now stood a solemn resolve, a silence louder than any revolt. The sandal embargo's reach extended beyond traders, touching even the spiritual journeys of pilgrims. This sacred journey, tread by many seeking connection with the divine, was now marred by economic strife. Pilgrims, usually protected by their sturdy sandals, now faced treacherous paths barefoot, a harsh reality reflecting Rome's overreach into their deepest beliefs. Their pain echoed through Judea, turning roads of hope into pathways of lament. These physical trials gave a human face to the rebellion, stirring empathy throughout synagogues and villages across the land. Amidst this unrest, the smooth flow of trade at Judea's crossroads came to a halt. Caravans, essential to sustaining the empire's demands, faced delays as roadside stalls vanished, leaving a glaring void. This interruption symbolised more than a trade hiccup. It exposed the empire's vulnerabilities and highlighted the region's seething discontent. Each stalled caravan whispered of Judea's growing unrest, a silent testament to the inadequacies of Roman administration. As discontent turned to action, the Roman authorities began taking serious notice. What began as a nuisance was now an unambiguous statement of rebellion that Rome could ill afford to dismiss. The organised market closures painted a vivid picture of defiance, a rebellion catalysed by a sandal tax that threatened Rome's tightening grip. Realising the threat, officials scrambled to contain a movement that lined marketplace shelves with tales of resistance. Merchants, traditionally apolitical, found themselves evolving from traders into reluctant revolutionaries. The senseless tax transformed them from neutral sellers to key players in a growing insurrection. Covert meetings became common, drawing together farmers and traders under one cause. Their shared grievances forged unexpected alliances, with strategies born out of necessity, weaving economic survival into acts of quiet rebellion. These meetings were less about evading taxes and more about carving out a path towards sovereignty, shaping their fate beyond empire walls. The tension was palpable in market squares once bustling with life, now arenas of unease. Disputes once settled amicably now sparked breezes of conflict amidst the stalls. Yet, through the apprehension, stronger bonds were forged, with stories and hopes shared in the shadows of silent stalls. Traders rallied around their cause, turning anxiety into action and isolation into community. They knew, amidst this turmoil, lay opportunity, not just to oppose an unjust levy, but to reclaim Judea's identity from the hands of distant rulers. Secret gatherings became the nerve centres of this defiance, where strategies and stories intertwined in candle-lit rooms distant from prying eyes. Merchants, now more than mere traders, channeled their economic acumen into subversive activities against Roman power. With farmers by their side, barter and underground markets became lifelines. Information slipped through hands as freely as shared wine, weaving resistance into the fabric of community life. Realising the need to elevate their protest, the merchants crafted a manifesto, a message in ink meant to crack the imperial facade. This plea to Roman rulers encapsulated not just opposition to the sandal tax, but highlighted aspirations of self-governance. It wasn't a reckless challenge, but a thoughtful appeal to reason and justice, illustrating the broader cultural affront of Roman impositions. Yet beneath this struggle lay the winds of change, stirred by merchants who dared dream of freedom. Their defiance marked the start of a larger movement, foreshadowing a re-evaluation of Roman influence in Judea. Their uprising, sparked by something as ordinary as a sandal, stitched together a tapestry of resistance, a quilt of stories and resolve. And though change didn't arrive overnight, the steps they took were strides toward autonomy, echoing across Judea as a testament to their strength and unyielding spirit. The air in Judea was thick with tension, as the new orders from the Roman governor descended like an unwelcome chill. This was not just a nudge, it was the fist of Rome tightening its grip. The decree was clear-cut and unforgiving. Punishment for the Sandal Rebellion would be swift. Judea's bustling streets, already simmering with unrest, now swarmed with soldiers trained to crush dissent. A barefoot step into the expansive courtyard of a government building risked instant suspicion and arrest. Under every Judean step, the shadow of Roman oversight loomed large and threatening. The governor's tactics went beyond mere force. They were a calculated exercise in psychological dominion. The rhythmic stomp of Roman boots filled the streets, a constant oppressive soundtrack of imperial might. Yet, in miscalculating the resilience and spirit of the Judean people, the stark might of Rome only peeled away the veneer of civility, revealing the raw and unyielding brutality of its rule. And in exposing this harshness, it inadvertently fanned the flames of Judean defiance, grounding their resistive spirit deeper into the very land beneath their feet. Rome's response extended beyond retribution. It demanded a display of overwhelming strength. Military parades transformed into spectacles meant to awe and intimidate. Soldiers, their armour polished and gleaming, marched in regimented cadence down stone-paved streets. The trumpets blared their triumph, but the message was clear, a sermon of subjugation. Yet, even as the citizenry lined the streets, absorbing the weight of this display, beneath the surface, seeds of revolt were quietly sown. Roman parades flaunted their strength, but the Judeans nurtured a subtler resistance, woven into the fabric of their shared resolve. In a breathtaking move, Rome aimed to suppress the Sandal Rebellion by doubling the taxes in key regions. The decision was both audacious and strategic. Impoverishing the populace further would sap their energy for insurrection. It was a gamble that underestimated the Judeans' capacity for endurance. Instead of stifling dissent, it sparked a wave of innovative defiance. The sandal morphed into a symbol of economic oppression, yet also a beacon of creativity for resourceful rebellion. Underground networks flourished, where cobblers in secret workshops turned into pivotal players, invigorating a covert trade of untaxed sandals, a move more potent than any armed resistance. One ruthless tactic employed by Rome was the establishment of flogging fields, desolate areas designated for the public punishment of sandal tax dissidents. This wasn't just about the lashings, it was a theatre of intimidation designed to break spirits. The brutal crack of whips under the blazing sun aimed to silence dissent and bind community bonds with fear. However, rather than dissuading the populace, these acts of cruelty forged a deeper unity. Stories of endurance amidst suffering spread wide, transforming ordinary people into icons of resistance and painting a more indelible picture of defiance. Within the walls of synagogues, once the heart of spiritual sustenance, whispers of rebellion found fertile ground. The sandal tax became a metaphor for broader resistance against Roman domination. Here, sacred discourse intertwined with political strategy. Ancient texts were revisited, casting parallels between past triumphs over oppression and current struggles. As these discussions echoed within hallowed halls, they expanded the rebellion from mere survival to a fight for identity and autonomy. Tradition became a rallying point, nurturing a collective consciousness poised against an overpowering foe. The rebellion extended quietly into Judean households, where acts of defiance became a routine as daily meals. Families strategized over bread, about safe routes for untaxed sandals. Children learned secret signs as naturally as their alphabets. This homegrown resistance wasn't overt, but a steady, unwavering current, weaving the rebellion into the daily tapestry of life. Every household became a sanctuary of defiance, where even ordinary acts like lacing a sandal adopted a deeper, rebellious meaning. In the bustling markets of Judea, beneath the vibrant exchanges, a hidden economy thrived. Here, artisans and tradesmen conducted business beyond Rome's reach. This undercurrent of commerce became the lifeblood of rebellion, concealed in the daily turning of goods and gossip. Through a language of glances and subtle gestures, transactions unfolded in defiance of imperial decrees. This covert market culture gave rise to new legends of merchants turned heroes, their quiet persistence a testament to the strength of an underground resistance. Denied freedom of movement, the Judean souls became emblems of their struggle, infusing the ground they traversed with revolutionary significance. Sandals, taxed and contested, transformed into symbols of rebellion. Every step taken against Roman authority resonated with the unspoken promise of independence. These stories spread like wildfire. Sandals of defiance whispered their tales of resolve across deserts and cities. In the patterns etched into their souls, they carried messages of endurance, each print a quiet yet potent testament to the Judean spirit. Irony etched itself into the unfolding drama of Rome's conquests. In striving to crush rebellion, they unwittingly nurtured a robust network of defiant sandal wearers. The increased taxes only bolstered the collective Judean resistance. Every Roman tactic inadvertently forged new avenues of unity and defiance. Simple sandals became powerful icons of memory and struggle, writing a new chapter in the narrative of resistance against an empire unaware of its looming miscalculation. As sandals trod across dusty roads and cobbled paths, they wove together the past and future. This rebellion, echoing the ancient saga of David against Goliath, the defiance enshrined in these everyday objects bore witness to a broader fight for autonomy rooted in Judean law. Here was a rebellion encoded in tradition, its story a beacon, linking past with present resistance. An act as simple as lacing a sandal came to symbolise a collective journey toward freedom, embedding the Judean spirit with a legacy untouched by the iron hand of Rome. In the shadowed corners of marketplace alleys and dimly lit, candle-flickered rooms, a rebellious network quietly stirs. Named with subtle irony, the heel of the people forms its roots, beginning its defiant dance against the Roman sandal tax. A collective of disgruntled sandal makers, traders, and even a few rogue priests. These rebels are driven not just by financial strain but by the insult to their heritage. A sandal to them is more than a simple shoe. It is an emblem of their identity, of traditions and stories passed through generations. And now it stands desecrated by an empire that knows not its significance. Their symbol, a torn sandal bound with a simple thread, becomes a mark recognised by many who share their anger and resolve. In whispers exchanged over market stall chatter, they find strength and promise each other fortitude against Rome's ever-watchful eyes. Communication remains paramount amid the tight grip of Roman surveillance, yet these rebels prove ingenious. They carve out discreet channels, mysterious symbols etched into door frames, codes slipped into the chants of street hawkers, gatherings whispered under the shade of old olive trees. The clandestine meetings take them from bustling market towns to rugged hills, each echo of unsanctioned sandals upon cobblestones a silent call to rebellion. Even local women, with their deft hands weaving cloths, hide untaxed sandals in cunning quarters. This quiet thrumming of resistance, despite the empire's shadow, grows into a defiant melody heard across Judea's landscapes. Crafting these untaxed sandals becomes an art form in itself. Humbled craftsmen, long resigned to their roles, find new purpose. Through sweat and determination, leather is shaped and stitched, not only to clothe feet but as living symbols of resistance. Subtle stitch designs carry hidden messages, joining communities in a secret dialogue echoing beneath every step. These unburdened sandals speak of a people reclaiming autonomy, their stories woven into intricate designs meant to awaken hearts in silent revolt. Deception weaves throughout their efforts. Routes once mundane, now veiled in secrecy, become lifelines of resistance. Maps hidden in the sound of hoofbeats, and paths scribbled in hidden folds guide caravans under the Empire's nose, the seemingly ordinary now charged with clandestine intent. As each rebellious pair lands a new footprint upon Judea's soil, the craftiness of their makers shines, diverting the economic lifeblood intended for Roman coffers back into the hands of freedom seekers. Yet within this defiant orchestra, a silent language flourishes. Symbols speak to those who have eyes to see. A fish carved into a heel, a nod to unity against adversity, cloaked by the comfort it promises to a people yearning to be unbound. Such imagery fuels their secret gatherings, where complex dialects born of common trade mask revolutionary actions under surfaces of mundane existence. Messages slip unnoticed from one rebel to another, voices dancing around the prying ears of imperial spies. In this growing web, each word, each shoe, binds the rebels closer in their shared dream of liberation. The bustling marketplace transforms into their theatre. Beneath the vibrant chaos of transactions and vendor calls, rebel coordinators manoeuvre invisibly, infusing trade routes with smuggled sandals and messages. These locales, however tightly controlled by Roman legions, are rich with life and secrecy, the mundane masks hiding whispered insurgency. Amidst this sublime misdirection, resistance thrives. Rome stumbles, obliviously nurtured by its own distractions, underestimating the rebels' cunning interwoven under commerce's vibrant veil. Nomadic traders, familiar faces upon dusty roads, evolve into elusive spirits of rebellion. Disguised as mere merchants, they transport concealed goods within their wagons, untaxed sandals telling silent stories of opposition. Their lives depend upon guile, navigating a path between secrecy and survival. Their movements bear tidings far and wide. Through villages they wend, sharing stories that nourish the downtrodden, sparking hope. Together these journeys form channels of defiance, threading aspirations through watchful hills and valleys. Rome's response as the murmurs of dissent reach their ears is predictably harsh. The iron fist clenches tighter, markets fall into chaos under stringent surveillance. Yet, through each crackdown, the rebels' resolve deepens, forged in the fires of struggle. Legions trail a step too slow, an empire enthralled by its reflection, seeing not the unity growing beneath its nose. Each resilient act of rebellion emerges as both reclaiming spirit and omen, a dance of whispered defiance sweeping beneath the shadows of oppression. The sandals, with ingenuity now theirs, don more than just feet. They smuggle hope, strategies hidden beneath souls stroll in clandestine resistance. With tongues silent and minds unyielding, the rebels cloak themselves in ingenious covers, rendering Roman eyes blind to the unseen. These metaphorical fortresses wrap around intentions, each step a testament to perseverance against tyranny, each journey into hidden depths, pulling the string of unity closer than oppression might hope to sever. In an atmosphere thick with tension, trust's value holds as much weight as any sandal weighed in opposition. Yet amidst fears of betrayal, alliances burgeon, nurtured in shared adversity. Individuals meet shadowy threats with light carved from shared dreams. Even when fraught with failure, the resonance of unity and kinship deepens rebellion's roots. From each trial, greater resilience sprouts, a fellowship emboldened by every upheaval, the threads of their resistance weaving ever tighter. In this grand tapestry of defiance, the rebels discover not just rebellion, but a shared identity within Judea's rugged hills. Beneath starry skies, in stolen moments beyond Roman reach, their unity blossoms. Together they share laughter, tears and resolve, unbreakable against the Empire's influence. It's within these whispered gatherings that they craft something stronger than chains, a sanctuary for culture and heritage, a kindred resolve beating in every untaxed step, paving a future where sandals whisper stories of courage down through the ages. In the bustling port city of Caesarea, where Roman grandeur met local traditions, the air simmered with unrest. This city, a vital Roman hub, pulsed with whispers of dissent threading through markets, inns and public baths. The Sandal Tax, ostensibly a minor adjustment in the grand scheme of Roman taxation, had become a potent symbol of all the grievances Judeans held against their imperial rulers. Here, the tension wasn't just palpable, it was electrical, lurking like a storm cloud ready to burst. The tension reached a gruesome head one fateful morning. The city awoke to the shocking news of a Roman official's murder, a brutal act that bore the signs of righteous anger. His body, left in disarray in a wealthy district, sent shivers down the spine of every Roman in Judea. Notably, his sandals were missing, a chilling reminder that this was no ordinary crime. Inscribed on his footstool was a cryptic warning, a symbolic gesture that screamed defiance. This act of violence marked a stark escalation from whispered grievances to blood-stained confrontation. Judean leaders, now faced with a crisis of unprecedented scale, grappled with their next steps. Many of them had long balanced a precarious line between appeasing their Roman overlords and championing their people's cause. But the murder had changed the game. Publicly they decried the act, yet privately these leaders saw an opportunity amid the chaos. The Sandal Tax was more than an administrative inconvenience. It was a catalyst for potential rebellion, threatening every power structure in the region. As discussions simmered behind closed doors, Roman authorities scrambled to react. Brutal crackdowns ensued. Curfews were enforced, streets teemed with armed patrols, and suspected dissenters were hauled away by the dozen. Yet each heavy-handed measure served to stoke the fires of resentment further. Riots began to dot the map of Judea as towns erupted in defiance. The peaceful protests had turned into organised chaos. Mobs flared in the marketplaces and temple courtyards, transforming the ordinary sandal into a rallying cry for rebellion. These impromptu gatherings echoed with chants and resolved to resist their occupiers with every step they took. Shops were vandalised, and government buildings bore the brunt of this burgeoning anger as Roman insignias were defaced, sparking off vicious street battles. The footstool's ominous warning became the talk of Judea, its meaning dissected like an enigma wrapped in riddles. To the Judeans it was a demand, a primal scream for autonomy and respect. Among the Romans, it sowed seeds of fear and urgency. Was this a prelude to an uprising that would consume them all? Hastily convening secret councils, Roman authorities tried to interpret the threat, fearing the inscribed footstool's message could unravel the already fragile peace. Yet they struggled to comprehend the cultural intricacies at play, misjudging the symbolic significance embedded within the sandal. Alarmed by the murder and its aftermath, Judean leaders urgently sought avenues for reconciliation. Their appeals reached Roman ears, urging reconsideration of the tax that had triggered such deep, widespread strife. They couched their pleas in terms of mutual interest, pointing out that peace offered prosperity for both governor and governed. Yet the Romans faced their dilemma. Could they afford to appear weak by relenting, potentially inciting further uprisings? To Roman officials, Judea's unrest was a troubling echo of a wider discontent that could ripple across the empire. Reports suggested that other territories, weighed down by similar taxes, viewed Judea's defiance as a beacon of hope. Fearing a domino effect, Roman forces focused on containing the unrest, deploying spies and propaganda to splinter potential alliances. But the challenge was formidable. Disparate groups were gradually unifying under the emblem of the sandal. It was no longer just a local grievance, but a test of imperial resilience. In Judean society, the conflict reached boiling point, tearing at the fabric of communities and families. With opinions diverging, neighbours eyed one another warily, some betraying while others sheltered rebels. Peddlers hesitated, uncertain whether to serve Roman soldiers or support silent resistance. Within synagogues and homes, sermons turned to parables of just defiance and freedom. The sandal evolved from a taxed commodity to a symbol of survival and integrity, a test of faith amidst uncertainty. This saga demonstrates how a humble sandal, once a silent witness to the daily tread of Judean life, transformed into a catalyst for change. By imbuing it with revolutionary intent, the rebels unearthed an icon that united their cause, creating a resonance that echoed far beyond the dusty streets. The Romans, caught by surprise, underestimated the symbolic power wielded by this simple artifact, their oversight laying bare the fragility of their rule, a lesson that stretched well beyond the cobbles of Caesarea. As each side braced for the final confrontations that loomed on Judea's horizon, an air of uncertainty settled over the region. Futures lay in the balance, shaped by the choices of those enmeshed in this bitter struggle. For the Judeans, the revolt was a chance to fight for their identity and sovereignty. For the Romans, it was a probing of the limits of their control. This chapter in the history of Judea, born from sandals and sandalwood, foretold seismic shifts that would ripple through the empire, challenging the very foundations of Roman dominion. The step that echoed, how the sandal became a symbol of resistance. Rome's decision to quietly repeal the sandal tax was a muted affair, lacking the grandeur usually associated with imperial decrees. In dimly lit chambers, Roman officials reluctantly accepted the reality. This tax on sandals was not worth the trouble it stirred across Judea. Behind closed doors and secret scrolls, the repeal slipped into place, masked as an economic manoeuvre, a simple budgetary adjustment. Yet, to astute observers and locals alike, it was clear. A strategic retreat it was, an acknowledgement plastered on parchment that sustaining the tax was inciting far more rebellion than revenue. Like rain seeping into the thirsty soil, the news of this repeal quickly reached the bustling bazaars and winding alleyways of Judea. Everywhere it was celebrated with gusto, a quiet, sardonic revelry echoing the realization that the mighty Rome had been politely but firmly told to step back. In Judean markets and homes, the sandal transformed beyond its leather and straps. It became part of the vibrant tapestry of folklore and tradition. Where once it quietly bore the weight of daily life, now it carried the indomitable spirit of defiance. Around fires, old and young alike relived tales of those who had walked barefoot past Roman eyes, their feet coated with dust but their pride untouched. Songs spun in cobblestone corners, and the humble sandal emerged in art and pottery, each a piece of an uprising that managed to unite a diverse people under one cause. This was no mere footwear anymore. It had taken on new life, akin to the echoes of defiance that whispered through history. As the revolt's story travelled beyond Judean borders, it sparkled against the sunlit horizons of other Roman provinces. Oppressed peoples burdened by similar taxes and despotism embraced the sandal as an emblem of defiance. Across windswept fields and bustling cities, the story of the sandal found a quiet place in hearts hungry for freedom, whispering of how even the most ordinary item could spark remarkable cascading change. The sandal morphed into something larger, a reminder that not all empires could reckon with the tenacity of symbols and shared narratives, weaving the common threads that connected distant peoples in a shared struggle for dignity. The aftermath left Judeans with newfound empowerment. The echo of their resistance fanned the flames of unity and self-governance within their communities. They began to reclaim their traditions and customs with fierce pride, crafting a sense of identity that resisted Rome's attempts at assimilation. It was a cultural renaissance where sandals took the dignified place of an emblem, as generations wore them stoutly, notably renewed by the fuel of their heritage rather than the fire of their oppression. Through this, the lessons of the Sandal Revolt seeped into everyday Judean life, like ink absorbed into ancient parchment. Sandals and their story travelled through time, appearing in murals and stage plays, becoming more than just tales from the past, splashed across frescoes or carved into graffitied walls. Artifacts spoke, a hushed call to contemporary ears, inviting them into a legacy of resistance. Theatres echoed the revolt's essence, allowing audiences to relive its urgency and courage as each generation found its reflection in the sandal's tale. This woven narrative bound ancestor and descendant, interpreting the past not as distant tales, but as a continuing banner of unyielding spirit. In philosophical and ethical whispers, sandals tread softly across human dignity's landscape. The endless narrative howled of moral compasses bending but unbroken, teaching about the profound juncture between personal decisions and the wider surge of community identity. Against Rome's iron fist, Judeans discovered their own agency and autonomy, the realization that even humble footwear spoke volumes of their enduring humanity and integrity. In ancient Judea's dim-lit past, where the air tasted of incense and iron, sandals carved pathways not just on roads, but in the hearts of people yearning to be free. Now, centuries later, their story holds relevance like a relic from a parable whispered through the ages. To modern thinkers and those stoked with the fire of autonomy, the sandals ascended beyond leather soles. They rose as a testament to the fervent spirit of those who believed against great odds in the power of collective dignity. As we draw this tale to a close, consider the sandals whose impression was felt far beyond their sole purpose. Their step still echoes in the regimen of our resistance today, etched into the narrative of struggle and triumph. The sandals remind us that sometimes the smallest act can leave the deepest mark on history, urging each viewer to step boldly into their own stories. If you've been intrigued by this journey into the past, do subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more tales where history breathes again, unexpected and alive. Like and hit the bell for our next adventure.